All right, it is 6 p.m. on August 15th. Welcome to the Rutland Town School Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everyone to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Start by asking for a motion of approval of agenda and any additions, deletions, and changes. I do have a few additions and deletions and changes, I guess. First of all, I'd like to add a mutual link update under old business to go first if possible, but we'll move it depending on when Officer Washburn is able to attend. Secondly, policy H4, instead of being a first read, it should say rescind. And there is also a family request to be added under new business, and we'll do that before we do the schedule discussion. Anybody have anything else to add? Okay, I'll take a motion then.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor?
Aye.
And next we have teacher, staff, and community comments. Since we don't have, well, we do have one community member online and one in the audience. Would anyone like to speak? All right. Seeing no takers, we'll move on to the Rutland Town School staff student highlights. This is a new agenda item, which is to highlight staff and students throughout the year. Since we did not have school in session this past month, we don't have anyone here tonight, but hopefully we'll be able to fill this space with some highlights such as, you know, little visions of the art or what's going on in the classroom or the upcoming concerts or plays or things like that. So it's just a space to allow the students and teachers to shine a little bit and let us know what they're doing. So we look forward to that. Next up is finance, and Lewis is on the phone. He did give us a budget report if we'd like to turn to that, and Lewis, it's on you.
Thank you. Good evening. So last year ended with a surplus of $205,000. That's a lot more than we had planned for, and there's a few reasons for that. So I've highlighted the major variances. Some of these things that we already knew about prior to us ending the year, they were part of the forecast. I think the significant one that's leading to the huge increase in the surplus is the special ed assessment refund. So special ed fund at the SU did have a large surplus, and that was assessed back to the districts based on the allocation that they were charged in the original budget. So that resulted in almost an $87,000 refund to Rutland Town. There were a few other items that were sort of incurred at the end, including there was substitute savings, and those we didn't really know until we reconciled that substitute account. So I'll go through some of all of the major significant variances. So there was $33,000 in additional revenue due to rental income and interest income. Interest rates had increased significantly since the prior year, so the interest that we made in the account did result in higher than budget revenues. And then it also has the prior year surplus revenue from the SU general fund. There was tuition savings of approximately $199,000, and that was for both pre-K and secondary. That's all tuition as a whole, so I just take it all and I lump it all in the same bucket. The special ed refund and the substitutes I touched on already. Fuel and electric were over budget this year, and that's due to the increase in fuel from the prior year. Our contracted price was $1.75. last year. This year it increased to $365. Salaries and benefits were overspent due to changes that occurred in actuals versus from when we created the budget. There was $30,000 in supply savings, $10,000 in repair savings, and $22,000 in transportation savings. I also listed at the bottom, we have 2 reserve accounts that had balances at year end. The capital improvement fund, which has $97,000 in it, and there's a scholarship fund with $1,435 in it. Any questions?
I had a few questions, Louis. I was curious, what point of the year do you know when the tuition savings are realized? Like, when are tuition bills paid? The last ones?
Tuition bills are paid, the first one's paid in September, October, and then the second one in February, March. So, I mean, we usually know, and my forecast included tuition savings in it. Mm-hmm. And some of these tuition savings are not all related to tuitions, so there was money set in tuition as a contingency. And so after that contingency was gone, those monies are resulting in savings. I mean, if you'd like to discuss that further, we can go into executive session later. So, but usually around February, March, let me start off. Usually in like September, October, we have a sense as to where we are. By February, March, that solidifies a little bit because you do have some changes that occur from the fall to the winter. There's additional changes that could occur after February, March, but they become minimal because all tuition is prorated. So if somebody moves in or moves out after February, March, it's not going to have a huge impact. Unless there were students that one of the districts forgot to bill us for, and then they come back later and they bill us and they provide all the proper documentation, we really can't say no if it was just an error. But usually February, March, we have a pretty good sense as to where we are in tuition.
And then I wanted to highlight that I know you said that pre-K was part of that tuition bucket, but we actually overspent by almost $75,000 in pre-K tuition. Well, we spent $75,000. I think that was $65,000 or so over our budget. And I just wanted to highlight that because that is one of the points that we're trying to make with going for the second floor, that by increasing our space, we can increase capacity and decrease that tuition payment for pre-K. So I just wanted to point that out from your report. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, I would also point out, though, that those students that we're paying for, yes, that line is overspent, but by bringing that in-house would double that expense. Because the cost that we're paying out to a private provider is only the state tuition, which is about $3,700 per student. And if you look at all of our programs and the actual cost per student, it's at least double that because we offer full-day programs. So yes, I mean, I'm sure it has other benefits that the board would want to consider, but by bringing more programs in-house for pre-K, it doesn't decrease your costs, it actually increases.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Without any additional revenue from the state.
So, do we get revenue? We do get revenue from the state per pupil, but that's
correct.
But
we
even
get
with
the same
that,
revenue from the state for a pre-K student, whether they're going to a private provider 10 hours a week or from our in-house program full time.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. My next question is, with this surplus, is that just knowledge and it automatically gets put onto next year's budget? Or do we have the ability to put some of that into the capital improvement fund, for instance, or something like that?
So we would discuss this more during budget season. There's 2 options. The board, if the board could ask the taxpayers to put a portion of this into the capital improvement fund, whatever doesn't get put into one of those funds would automatically go back to the taxpayers as a revenue. So that we would offset our educational spending in our budget.
So we would need to put that up. that on the ballot if we wanted to put some of the surplus money into the capital improvement.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And I'm trying to see. I was also curious. We've been talking a lot about field trips, and I noticed on our expenditure report that I can wait till the expenditure report if you want. It's not really part of. Well, I guess it is the year-ended financial. Sorry, I take that back. So we had about $5,000 budgeted for field trips, and none of it was spent. Is that because it was taken out of a different bucket, or? I'm just curious. Do you have any knowledge as to why? Because it looked like the school provided field trips, so I was just trying to figure out where those came from.
I couldn't answer that without really, I mean, just based on the report. I'm just trying to find it. What page of the report is that on?
I think it was near the end. Let me look. Yeah, the last page, page 5.
Okay, cool. So what this is showing is that we spent 5,000 and the budget was 0.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I misread that this afternoon. Thank you. That makes more sense. Thank you.
And so one other thing that I'll just mention, and I don't know if this is the case too, but so we just recently in the last 2 weeks went through a full accounting remapping of all our accounts. So if you compare this expenditure report to a prior expenditure report, you'll notice all of the account codes are different. So this was a huge undertaking. I had to go through each account code and each segment of the account code and remap it to the new account code. We had to do this. It was a state requirement to be fully compliant with the state chart of accounts. So number one, the reports look different, and you'll notice that. But two, I'm going through them to make sure that the mapping was 100% accurate. So I'm reviewing these expenditure reports versus budget, and so there may be a slight tweaks. Like, so there's been a few situations where 2 accounts have mapped into 1 account, and so it's just a matter of going in and creating the second account and moving the budget, because it mapped all the history and everything. So if we're still going through that process, and we'll be done in the next few days.
Thank you very much. I had some other questions, but not on the business report that you sent.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any other questions on the budget report?
I got one.
Yeah.
Just with everything that you're transitioning over and putting everything together, this is a solid number, the 205?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So can we move to the financial reports? Is that all right, Louis?
Okay with me.
Okay. I was just curious. I noticed that most of the software line was already spent this past month. Is that normal that we typically spend all of the software at the beginning of the year, which would make sense? I was just curious.
I don't know specifically without looking at the details, but yes, I think that could potentially be normal. I mean, if we have subscriptions that we are subscribing to every year, they come due at the beginning of July, so they're paid for usually on an annual basis. So if the period is running July to June, they usually come due July 1st. They're paid during the summer, and then you don't have any additional expenses throughout the year unless you're adding additional programs.
And I think the only other question I had was, I didn't notice any RTS check warrants this time. Were there none written in this past month, or was it just not put in our materials?
We've been processing. There might not have been any student activity ones, but there's, regular.
That's what I mean. The student activity ones.
Okay. Since school was closed, there may not have been any student activities checks cut this month.
Okay, perfect. All right, I think that was all my questions. Thank you very much. Anyone have any other questions for Louis? Louis, do you mind sticking around for the second floor update, which is next?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the second floor update. I think everyone received the email today with the estimate from our architects, and
I did not.
I sent it late, so you probably have it now. Let me pull up. I don't remember what time it was. Yeah, it came in it came in this afternoon and I didn't get to it till that point. So the estimate as of today, what came out to being a little over 22,400,000. What this does not include is if we do need sprinklers, which is still a question. At our last meeting at the board retreat, we were told that we would not, but our architect has since learned that we might, and it's still a question. So it might be a little higher than that. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts, Louis, about the cost, if that was kind of what you were expecting and what you would recommend doing next from your perspective. We can't hear you. Sorry, you're muted.
As far as what I was expecting, I hadn't really put much thought into the full upstairs and what that was going to cost. So when I did see the number, my first reaction was, wow, that's a lot of money. And that would create a pretty sizable bond payment. And right now, with interest rates being so high, it's not the best time to be borrowing. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless this was time sensitive, I guess my recommendation would be to hold off until we have some of our other bonds paid off. But I mean, if this is time sensitive and the community supports it, then that's something we should, I guess, explore and put out on the ballot. But I mean, it will have a significant impact to the budget.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts from the board?
I need to digest it a little bit, I think. I mean, I had no barometer on if it would have been, it ranged between $1 million and $8 million in my head. Like,
yeah.
I really had no real sense on it, so I'd kind of want to explore a little bit. But it's hard to say chasing interest rates and things like that could, that's a tough question to ask, right? So.
A lot of money right now, and I think we probably need to step back and look at it and maybe refocus on getting the elevator done, getting the stairways done on the outside, and get that part of it done maybe, and then move to the inside.
Like, go back to doing it the piecemeal method.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to have to happen.
Which we knew that we needed what we just got to happen first before we could do that.
I wouldn't want to ask the voters for that kind of money.
I mean, the other thing that you need to keep in mind too is this is just the number for the construction, and what's it going to cost to furnish it and all the finishings and then staff it. So I mean, if you're going to be expanding classrooms and so is that going to lead to additional staffing, additional custodial staff? So just this alone, you're looking at a bond payment of upwards of $150,000 a year for a 20-year bond, and then what is the other budget impacts going to be for the additional staffing and supplies and materials, heating, electric? So it's a full package, so you have to keep that all in mind.
I'm not sure in that position, really, I think we need to go back and just think about it,
I think it would be really helpful to have the staff and teachers also weigh in on need, like how time sensitive this need is. And also maybe see if there's a way for the project to be divvied up into stages like we had wanted to do originally, to make it a little bit more palatable to voters and to our budget. So, I don't
And
know.
we can tweak the design and stuff a little bit too,
Potentially,
and calm that down.
yeah. I don't think the design was outlandish, though. I think it was reasonable
bit.
and, I don't know. So.
I mean, if we're gonna do it, I wanna do it right. I don't wanna
Yeah.
like cut corners just because of the costs. But is it the time to do it right now?
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to think about.
Mhm.
Because the design up there would be great, you know. I mean, if you, but
So I think we have to figure out how we would find out if now is the time or not.
yeah, and maybe even have a community forum.
Mhm.
You know,
Another one.
now that we have it, maybe people will be a little bit more interested in. We have, you know, a good design. We have the numbers. Maybe people will come and have an opinion. You know.
I'm curious if Ed, who is the architect, would be willing to kind of, and Skylar would be willing to kind of see if we could have options. So this would be the project for the whole thing. How could we divide it up into a 3-phase project and make it more
Yeah.
reasonable? Starting with the elevator for accessibility and the staircase, and seeing what else had to be done in order for that to happen, and then maybe using half the space first and then the second half for another time, something like that, and just do it in pieces. So I think, I guess I would need a motion to get back to the architects to ask that, or, I don't know. Because it would probably cost a little bit more money, I think, on their time to do that. And Louis, that money, that if it would cost anything, which we could at least inquire about and make a decision on next meeting, would that be able to come out of the capital improvement budget if we wanted? I can't hear you, sorry. You're still muted.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah, yes, if that was the board's decision, then we can take any of the architect fees out of the capital improvement fund.
Okay. So I don't know if we need a motion for me to ask Ed if what the cost would be, and then we could decide what we want to do next meeting and make a motion to do that then, if we agree by consensus now for me to reach out. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll do that. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions for Louis before he goes?
Do we know what the cost per square foot was for the SU office? Is that something we can share even, or do you know that?
Those for the new office that we're office
Yeah.
space?
Oh, you probably
Square
don't.
footage-
Right?
The square footage is 6,500.
Oh, no, I was wondering about the
Cost
the-
per square foot, just as a point of comparison.
But you wouldn't know the construction costs, right?
No, that information was not shared with us.
Got it. That's fine. I was just wondering for comparison.
Right. Thank you so much, Louis. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. All right.
David, did you say you wanted teacher input on that too?
I think it doesn't hurt to have that for next time, as part of the discussion. That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I can talk to Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we need to get more financial information before we would move forward anyway, but it doesn't hurt to ask the question of at least from the teachers and staff standpoint, why is the time now? And when interest rates are high and it costs a lot, why is it worth it now and not waiting or doing it in piecemeal?
I mean, interest rates are high relative to the past 5 years, but not really relative to
Forever.
historical
Yeah.
standards. What were they when this place was built? Probably 18% or something.
Hmm.
Can you send that to me, because I'm not getting it?
I'll send it again. I went to your CSU email, I
Yeah,
think.
that's what
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. To Ed and ask what. Okay, so now we're on, after you do that, Chris, we're on the 7th and 8th grade trip policy. We have a draft. Thank you. And there's 2 there. And one more for you. I want to pass that. They're both those down. Okay. All right. So Chris spoke with our lawyer, and this was a draft that they came up with. So we need to know if we need to warn it for next meeting so that we could approve it.
This is based off the discussion that we had at the July
At the
board retreat.
I think it looks good.
Hello. The only thing I was curious about, and maybe we need to speak with Chris again about it, is at times the 8th grade end of year class trip has not been funded solely by fundraisers. So I was wondering if a word like will usually be funded, or
think,
will primarily.
Chris's concern was if how the 8th grade trip was being funded, if individuals are being asked to individually fundraise this while we're paying for the 7th grade trip, but yet we're asking individuals to pay an out-of-pocket expense, or if there's going to be raised solely as class funders. So I think that's clear delineation, but I think that would change the policy. And I think Chris's interpretation of this, he might suggest otherwise, because I think if you put maybe, I think there'd be some other carve-outs that he would want to put in there as well. Because that was one of his concerns, was that if the board is going to make this decision to pay for the 7th grade, but then for the 8th grade, which is supposed to be a culminating experience for all 8th grades, but yet some families out of means might be able to pay out of pocket, say no problem, here's the money, while others may have to work a little bit harder, may have to fundraise. Is that really, from a standpoint of equity, is that really the best thing? So, you know, really by doing this is the sole focus on all funders will be on towards this culminating trip.
So if something like COVID happens again, hopefully never does, and we use ESSER money to pay for it, which we have done, is that okay?
Yes.
Even with this policy here?
Yes.
Okay.
In
That-
situations like that, you know, you can have a board motion, which we, you know, like the SU board at that time approved, that they will handle all expenses related to 8th grade and I think senior class trips, which is what they did. So. Yep.
That's what, I just want to make sure that it still leaves room for that, because it doesn't really spell that part out. Like,
Well, I mean, like I said, I think 5 years ago, no one ever thought pandemic. That
Right,
would never
right.
entered anybody's mind
Right.
that this was a scenario to take into account. I think with the policy, the board always has the authority to adjust and to change policy as well. So if there's, but I think when I spoke with Chris, and even though there's 2 sentences to this, it's very short, very brief, we spent a lot of time just looking at the wording of this, and I think, you know, the second sentence, you know, particularly since the focus of saying that we're going to pay for this experience for 7th graders from this point on, but yet you have the 8th grade, which is going to be cost substantially more. How is that going to be funded, and why aren't funds going to be allocated towards this, which is a larger expenditure? And then, will that be solely on the individual to pay? So if an individual can't pay the X amount of dollars, or it's just one flat bill that's the class fundraises, and it's like that thermometer, and we're getting closer to this. So I think that was just a discussion that we had in terms of what would be best.
Okay.
And that may be a question that Mike and Sarah and the staff may want to go back and discuss and come. So, but this is something which, if the board doesn't feel comfortable, I can go back to Chris and look for other wording and come back. So that was just the explanation behind the wording of this. So
I will entertain a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Well, no, you be it first.
Oh, no, I'm not second, you can be first.
I'm not supposed to be the first.
Oh, you're
As a
not?
chair.
Oh, you'll entertain, oh.
I will entertain a
Oh.
motion.
This is gonna have to be redone anyways eventually,
Why?
because we're paying for this year for 7th grade, but we're not paying for them for next year.
yes.
No, we are. That's what this policy is
stated.
about.
That's why it is.
That's what we've been talking
Right now,
about.
perpetuity will be paying for seventh graders.
Solely funded, like fundraisers.
The
Eighth grade
eighth grade end of year class trip will be funded solely by class fundraisers. But the school board will now be paying $500 for seventh grade trips.
Seventh grade.
Going forward. So that way families don't have to spend or fundraise 2 years in a row. It makes it very complicated because then you have competing fundraisers and it's very difficult. So that's why we're saying everybody knows in eighth grade you're going to be helping, you're going to fundraise for this trip. So you could start earlier, knowing that that's going to happen, but you won't have two classes competing with fundraisers to pay for their trips next to each other. So that was why we came up with this. Instead of saying it's just for next year, we're going to do it going forward because it was problematic. Asking parents to pay several $100s in seventh grade and then several $100s more in eighth grade, and with the expectation that they also had to fundraise. It was a lot, especially for some families. So trying to make it easier.
Pay up to 500 each year.
We decided we weren't going to do that.
Okay.
Because it would blow our budget out of
Okay.
craziness, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Tina, just before you entertain a motion, if the wording will be funded solely by class fundraisers, if that's something you want Chris to look at, then.
No, because I do think it leaves it a little, I mean, people could write a check and it just go into the fundraising,
Correct.
you know what I'm saying? So like if,
So it could be primarily or.
Right, I mean, and most, it depends, I mean, there are two different ways eighth grade will do trips. Either it would be every student has X amount of dollars they need to fundraise, and some families will just write a check and they're done. Others will have to go through other avenues or other approaches, or they just say, you know, 15,000 our goal, and everything they do, whether it be bake sales, concessions at sporting events, if a parent writes a
Donations,
check, it
yeah.
all goes back into this one large pot. At the end, that will be then equally distributed so all students can go on this trip. So it just depends on which experience, which approach Rutland Town takes traditionally.
So by having solely, it's basically saying just fundraisers. That's what our intention is.
But,
But-
right, but you
but
can
if
still
we
have a
put-
donation. If someone wanted to donate, people
So
would donate.
but that would that not be a fundraiser? I guess it depends how you define fundraisers.
I think what Chris was, when I spoke with Chris Leopold, his concern, or that's his concern, his question was, are individuals going to be held responsible for raising their own money, or is this more of a
I think
class?
so I don't think, I think what he's trying to say is Rutland Town can't say, if you don't come up with $800, you can't go. If you don't come, you know, like every individual, it's 5,000 for the entire class to go. That's what we need to fundraise.
So
And if,
it's not. It's a lot more than that.
I know, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like,
Yeah.
if that's what it was, then parents could say, here, I'll give this I don't want to fundraise, I'm just gonna give a check towards the fundraiser. So I think it just has to be, I think, you know, we just have to make it as, it's one goal, and not each individual kid has to come
X
up with
amount
this
per
amount of
person.
money.
So the way it's been historically done is every student has to come up with a certain amount of money, plus we need to fundraise for those students that can't. So, for instance, I think they're asked to pay $700 maybe-ish, plus their class has to raise $4,000 or something like that is how it has worked. So it isn't solely by fundraisers exactly. It's by family input and fundraisers.
So that might be a discussion that this board has with Mike and Sarah in September around fundraising. Because I know Chris would express concern, you know, that was one of the we talked about was concerns around the, you know, there might be a family who works very hard to raise $700 and yet someone does not do anything at all. I mean, so in theory, everyone could you know, like my daughter doesn't have a grandparent. It has one grandparent, so it has no one to, you know, that well is very dry for my daughter. So she might be $40 from my dad. That's about it. But he's got a long way to go. While others may have, might have a couple grandparents who are very wealthy. Say, here you go. Here's a check for $600, and I think that's where the discussion really has to have is just in terms of really, if this is supposed to be a culminating experience for 8th graders, is that more, is the burden to provide that, is that more on the board and the school or more on the families or the parents? And I think there's a discussion that, I think that was part of what we were talking about on the field trips and putting money aside, was that if this is when a student enters as a kindergartner or first grade, they know that when I get to 8th grade, I'm going on this 5-day, which is, I'll be honest, I've never heard of a 5-day 8th grade trip. I mean, in all my years, 30 years, I mean, it's over the top. I mean, kids enjoy it, but it's a culminating trip. But if that's the experience, is that, really should that be on the individual to pay for that, or really should that be on the school? And I think that's a discussion maybe that this board and the school really should have in terms of if that's part of the, what we believe, like I said, the culminating experience, educational experience, because there's educational value in going to DC and some of the things they do. But is that a burden we want to place on someone to raise $700? I know there are a lot of families, $700 they're not taking family vacations because they're trying to scrimp and scrape to pay for the kid to go to DC, feeling bad. They can't admit, but they're cutting corners. It might end up being grocery bills. It's a lot, so it's just, and others can write a check without thinking of it. So I think that's a discussion that, maybe we can have before, moving this policy forward, is just really what that trip is and how we feel it should be fundraised and supported, which I think would be an offshoot of the discussion we had, we've had prior around field trips, experiential learning, and what that should be.
Have they, up until this point, solely done it on, so that they have to come up with, so you're saying kids out of pocket have to pay like $700 every kid?
I mean, the price varies, but yeah, you pay a good amount of money towards it. I don't remember exactly. And on top of paying per person, then you also have to fundraise, and then you get a certain amount of fundraising, and everything above that gets divided among everyone that paid, so you could get some money back, but it's not that easy to reach that level in 1 year, because usually what happens is
And that's why we thought about doing this 7th grade, so
right.
we would give them 2 years to fundraise, right?
Well, they have all year. They have from the time they're kindergartners through 8th grade to fundraise, but it's really not known to the younger families that this is going to happen, and then it starts becoming more in your awareness when you're in 6th or 7th grade that this is coming up, and then you have the 7th grade trip where you're paying several $100s out to go to Camp Chinchacook, and so that already, there's that, and that's at the beginning of the year, and then you start thinking about fundraising, but then the 8th graders are already fundraising too, so then you start getting some, who's going to get to Sarah first to get approved to fundraise, and and then there's a fundraiser every weekend, or it just feels it's just too much sometimes. So we were trying to take that burden off by paying for the 7th grade trip, but maybe the wording of this needs to be a little bit more encompassing of what we would like to have happen for the 8th graders. I'm not saying that, I feel like it could be more on the families, but it maybe if it's more spread out throughout their time here, and I don't know.
Like I said, I think it's a
Yeah.
board's decision, but I think if this is going to be a culminating experience, I think it's a question the board should have is what is the responsibility of the board to provide that all students have access to that without putting burden on families and students to raise that money.
So should.
I think it's just it's something for discussion, so.
So
Thinking about flip-flopping it and saying, maybe we'll pay more towards 8th grade, and then 7th graders are on their own.
Maybe we
But I think it's
Something like that.
I think it's the same thing, to be honest, because
Yeah.
there's still that dollar amount that somebody is expected to fundraise. I look at it. It goes back to what we talked about around field trips and how this, Chingacook even came around was putting some money aside so these students could have this experience, and the burden would not be on the families or someone would feel left out because they couldn't pay for that. And I know that, like I said, we know that in Rutland Town, as well as in a lot of our communities, there are people of varying means. And for some, $700, like I said, I came from a very modest Midwest family, and if I came home and said, hey, $700, my parents like, well, you're not going to that. So it's like, here's a book on DC, and that's as close as I would get to DC. And I would have lived with it, but they probably would have felt horrible because like I said, with 5 kids, and it's just a lot of money. And when you fundraise, there are only so many places there average you can fundraise and go to too. So I think that's just I think this is part of that discussion. So if it really is not going to be this kind of collective approach that all money goes towards this, so this, like I said, like I go back to that thermometer, like 15,000, then I think that's a discussion just for the board and for Mike and for Sarah just to have, and how we change or reword the policy so it reflects that.
So should we table this?
Well, that could be your motion.
You can make the first one. I'm not doing it anymore.
Can I, Mike, what are your, I know you just.
Yeah, I think it is a good conversation to have, especially, giving the example of families and that $700, that can be a lot. So it is an important one to have, and I think I heard you mention that having that goal as a class and then working towards it all together with the consideration that some will come to fundraising events and some won't. That's for students-wise, families, but knowing that no matter what, that raised goes to them, that's a good conversation, I think, to have, and that Sarah could weigh in on too. And
I think the other big point, Chris, that you brought up was some kids don't have the means, not that they don't have the means to fundraise, they probably could have it, but they don't have the family, the network. Also, we don't want parents, robbing Peter to pay Paul, either. Like, we want to make sure that it's, equitable among people. So it's definitely, I think, if we were just to say, I would say, let's accept if we were just to say, okay, I don't know how much the field trip usually costs, like more than 5,000 you said, so this is the total, everything you do is going to that, then I would say yes. But if we're asking, I think we'll have to put different things in there if they're asking.
More thoughts about it.
If they're asking people to chip in 700 and then you fundraise on top of that.
I'm wondering if a survey to families too about, do they have ideas on how to make it more equitable? Because I know that, some families feel very upset that they're paying the amount and they're putting in all the time fundraising, and then half, or part of the class, the students never participate. It doesn't seem even that way either. So, some way to make it more equitable that everyone's putting their fair share in some way, somehow, I think would make everyone feel better about sharing a bucket at the end as well, somehow.
That's going to make it more difficult for you two guys to make sure everybody is involved in all of these fundraisers.
But it's fostering community too. And,
right, yeah.
Everybody wins by doing their
They
part.
can even do things during the school day that they're there. Like, so some of those kids that might not be able to get rides or, have the means, maybe they're making the posters or maybe they're contributing in different ways. Maybe it's like
Mhm.
one of your project-based learning, things in school on how to,
I know
fundraise people.
West Rutland also has a snack stand all the time.
Mhm.
And, we have a hit or miss one depending on how involved the class is. Maybe, if the, school kind of took over the leadership of that and had that go towards the 8th grade class trip, and somehow, each year one class mans it or something like that and is responsible. I don't know, there's different ways, I think, to make this happen. But yeah, it sounds like we need more thought on it, so I will entertain any motion that comes before the board. But I will tell you, Jeff, we were the 3 that were staying away when it was just for next year, 7th grade, so it would be helpful if you didn't mind making a motion for this one to start it.
Well, Tina, if you're just tabling it, they're really.
Then we don't need a
you don't
motion
need
to
a
table
motion,
it?
'cause
All
there's
right,
really
just
no
pushing it
action
towards the
being
next one?
taken, So it's just
Okay.
something which you can say, for me to work with Mike and Sarah, and Chris Leopold on having language that may more accurately reflect what this is, and we can bring that back, next meeting in September for consideration.
How does that affect the payment, though, for this 7th grade trip? Because I know that was the intent of this board, and that their trip is September 13th, which is
Well,
the
I-
day
I-
after.
I think if the board's intent is, if the 7th grade part of this is okay, I think we're fine with that. I think really the question is the second sentence, really want to make sure that the language being used to reflect what happens with the 8th grade trip and fundraising accurately reflects what's going on. It does not in any way, shape, or form kind of put us into a situation where someone says, well, no, it says here that this is how it's going to be done, or it says this. So I think you have to make sure that that second sentence accurately reflects that. So if the board still is committed to the 7th grade aspect, paying up to $500, that's okay, because that's really moving forward, in perpetuity. But I think, like I said, the 8th grade's one, that's the causing the concern right now. It's just the wording around how that trip will be fundraised.
My concern is that we don't have anything in place right now, and I'm not sure we made a motion that was okay to pay the whole thing.
I thought we did last
I
time.
thought it was a deposit. I don't know if that was
No,
the whole.
'cause
thing.
That was a
Wasn't it-
deposit, I
It was-
believe.
It was a deposit.
Yeah, because they needed the check previous even to that meeting, so she
Hold
had
the
to write
spot.
the check to, and get that
So
approved.
do we still owe
Motion for
money, or
$5,000.
does the school still owe money for it?
I believe so, because I believe all that check was just a deposit as a
That's what I thought,
placeholder.
too.
I believe.
Motion for 5,000.
We can check our.
Those wonderful,
Minutes, right?
those great minutes.
They were wonderful. I know it.
Yeah, down payment for 5,092.
Yeah, it's just a deposit.
Oh, that 5,000 was just the deposit.
So I was right on my 5,000. I
Yes.
thought that was the bill.
How much was it?
We authorized the payment of a deposit for 5,000, but it costs more than that. I don't remember the exact cost, but it was like 400 a student. There's 40 students. So,
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
yeah. So I think it was closer to like 16, 17, 18,000,
About 18.
something like that.
Okay.
So that's the only thing. I mean, we intended to warn this policy and approve it tonight, I think, is what we intended when we said that.
You would approve this to move forward, because then we would have to warn this before, and then it would be approved at the next meeting.
Well, I think we had,
So what
Yeah.
what we could do also is we could put a draft of this together, and then we could hold a quick special meeting, one night, and, as long as it's 10 days prior to the meeting, and then warn that, have this ready to be warned at the next meeting as well.
but the payment would probably be due before the day before.
I'm not sure.
But we also are writing this policy so that the 7th grade coming up in years.
Yeah.
Is moving
This is really just
forward,
committing
so-
that this is not a one-time.
Yes, so if we,
This is an expectation that all 7th graders moving forward will.
so if we approve to pay Gingercook now, we are going to approve,
With the intent that we will approve a policy this year.
yes, that all 7th grade. So
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
So I think that's what we would need a motion for tonight as well, to do that, because we only made the motion for the deposit last time.
Yes.
Make a motion to pass it as is? Or
Well,
no?
I wouldn't do that. I think we can table this, but we would need a motion that, because we don't have a policy in place, but our intent is to have a policy in place this year, we plan on funding the 7th grade trips going forward, so we would like to authorize them to pay the bill, the balance. Something like that. I think.
Make that motion to authorize to pay the bill for the 7th grade trip.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, Jeff.
Yep. Got a little confused there.
So we're tabling this policy and we'll discuss it further after Chris is able to speak with our
We'll
lawyer.
have another draft. It's-
Another draft, yeah.
After.
Okay.
With my concern. Chris will put it up.
Thank you, Jeff.
Do you want these copies of these draft back?
No, you can keep
We
them.
can keep them.
Or shred them, whatever you like. All right. So we have some audience members here that are here now. Our intent was to have them speak during the teacher, staff, and community comments at the, the staff and student highlights. They are from the Girls and Boys Club. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves, we'll be happy to move to you now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I'll start. My name is Malik Hines. I'm the Director of Operations, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what kind of we did this summer. And one of the big things we did was we went to the pool 3 days a week. So Micro was huge in that and making that happen for us. So that was awesome. We also performed The Little Mermaid, so that was cool too. The kids are really excited about that. And then we got to go to Starbase. So the fourth graders and older all got to go to Starbase. So they got that for 3 days, which was really awesome. And then our director, Jameson, he wrote a little something, so I'm just going to read that to you guys. We had a wonderful summer full of laughter and joy. Even when someone got upset, when we were able to talk it out instead of getting mad and yelling at each other. We enjoyed the sun when we could and enjoyed trying to dance in the rain even more. We complained together about the hike up to the pool and relaxed together in the water. Not all the members were friends when we started. Some didn't even know each other's names. But by the end of the summer, goodbye hugs were never ending, and everyone was sad to leave. So that was by our director, Jameson, and it was just a really great summer so far. So we're looking forward to the school year and what comes next.
And my name is Nicole Rice, and I'm the Executive Director for the Boys and Girls Club of Rutland County, and thank you so much for inviting us here tonight. We are incredibly excited to be in Rutland Town. Like Malik said, the summer was amazing, and I think if that's a kind of a how it's going to go, then we're very excited. Just a little bit about us. So Rutland Town is our 6th site, so we have sites at Castleton, Benson, Orwell, Fairhaven, and Rutland City. We have a pretty tried and true model at Boys and Girls Club, with our huge focus just being on relationship building and building strong leaders and citizenship within our youth. We have a set schedule that we run by, so looking forward to after school, just to let you guys know what that will look like. So all the students come and they have a nutritious snack right away when they arrive to us. We offer what we call a power hour, which is an academic block in which they can work on academics. We often bring in tutors from the schools or locally to work with the youth during the after school time. After that, we have a huge focus on physical activity, group games, arts and crafts, and things like that. We also each week implement Boys and Girls Club of America curriculum and programming, and that centers a lot around healthy habits, self-esteem, citizenship, leadership, those strong Boys and Girls Club like national focuses. And then we also offer a daily dinner, and then we also do open club time, which is really just a free time for kids to mingle and to outside of any programming or team building or that kind of stuff, just a free time to kind of youth-led and youth choice. So that's what our afternoons look like. So going into the school year, starting in September, any kids who come to our program from Rutland Town come down to the cafeteria, and that's what you'll see their schedule look like daily. We always have it posted for the kids to see and for staff to see. 2 other things that I'll just highlight about Boys and Girls Club is we have a very strong emphasis on community engagement and on family engagement. So we're going to be working really hard in the beginning this fall to make community connections. We love to bring members from the community in to teach like enrichment programming if they have a passion, if it's knitting or cooking or gardening and they want to come and do that with our youth. We strongly encourage that. So we'd love to make those partnerships and also just exploring the community with the youth as well. So we look forward to doing that. And then the other piece is the family engagement that we're really strong on. So our unit directors commit to one night a month doing a family engagement activity. So that usually looks like family dinner or celebrations or anything. Really, it's youth led. So the youth will sit down with the directors and come up with what they want to share with their families. So that'll be another thing that'll be happening monthly. And then we just want to be involved as an organization. We want to be involved in the town and in the school. So any assemblies that you have or any community events that you guys run, or if you have a PTO, we'd love to be a part of any of that as well. So. And we're really excited specifically about Rutland Town. So the flyer went out today, and within an hour, I'm pretty sure Malik and I had at least 6 families reach out. So it was a really fast and good push. We already have 4 applications that they came to the Rutland site and filled out today. So we're excited to get kids signed up and for the opportunities here in Rutland Town. So thank you.
The other thing I can add to is we're just really big on the community connections already. You know, just from the summer. Friday Night Live was just last weekend, and we're already seeing kids from Rutland Town over there. You know, obviously our site's right on Merchants Row. So just, you know, building that connection with every community member we can in community business. You know, that's why it was so helpful with Mike, you know, meeting him really the first day, and him really setting up the pool for us. It was just really awesome, so thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
And your after-school program starts the 11th, right? September 11th?
Yeah, September 11th is when our programming starts. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And next, we are up to field trips, experiential learning, course offerings. So we wanted to talk to you about the enrollment in kindergarten. It looks like it went down a little bit from what Sarah had mentioned in July, from 33 to 30. Is that correct? In your principal's report?
For kindergarten enrollment, I believe so. But we have had that enrollment number in total is inaccurate. It's close, but we have had some enroll within the past week. I'm not sure exactly how many, but we have gotten some, and I don't remember if any of those ones are kindergarten. So, but it's around there. Okay. Yeah.
So I think we were discussing whether or not we would consider a second kindergarten para. Did you have anything to add to that discussion, Mike?
No, not specifically. Sarah and I had met earlier today, but we didn't talk about that specifically.
So from what I've heard in the community is that you're trying something a little different this year with like a kindergarten camp for the first few days, to try to, I guess, to let all the students kind of mingle and then separate them into classes. Is that correct?
I'm not 100% familiar on the details.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's something new, but it sounds like from some of the parents in the community that they were mentioning that to me. So since Sarah's not here and you don't have anything new to add and we still are in flux, I would think that moving this to next month would make sense.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you.
I know my grandson starts and they're doing a half day, one family night with just like 4 or 5 other kids, and then the next day like a half a day. So they're kind of gradually putting them in.
But they don't. He doesn't have a teacher yet.
Yeah, he's got a teacher.
Oh, he does have a teacher. Yeah. Okay, so then I really don't know. Maybe the parents didn't know either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have assigned teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the parents I spoke with didn't seem to think they did, but that may be that they didn't receive the information yet. So, okay. So we'll wait till next time anyway, because we don't know enough details or any more needs.
Ted is not joining us tonight. She just said so she can go whenever.
Okay. So we're going to move back to the mutual link update and get as much information as we can from Officer Angie. Hello.
So Deputy Chief Washburn was supposed to be here. We had a meeting yesterday with Sarah Tetzlaff and Kelly Trea and Deputy Chief Washburn and myself. Mutual Link is a security system, and they offered us 60 to 90 days free trial with no obligation at the end. So, seeing that we already discussed them, I can discuss the whole thing because we can't do that except the executive session. They want to start with us as soon as possible. We're one of the pilot schools. Rob Evans is trying to get it through the whole state of Vermont, but they want us as one of the pilot schools to start it with. We get the bells and whistles, whatever we want to in the school for 60, 90 days and no obligation at the end. We have not heard from the grant yet. Hopefully by September we will. And then, by the time the grant is over, the free trial is over, we should have a grant and hopefully can keep the system if we like it. So it's just an informational real quick that we had a meeting yesterday with two gentlemen. One is in Clifton Park and he would be our representative that would come up here and figure everything out. That's the update.
Great.
Okay.
Angie, to clarify,
Yes.
Sarah's sheriff, that when we say that one of the pilots, so the state, Rob Evans is kind of in charge of Vermont school safety, has earmarked some schools. We were not one of those schools who were initially identified, but Mutual Link had said that in addition to those schools that have not yet been defined, that they would be willing to use Rutland Town as an additional pilot. So it would not be replacing any schools that Rob Evans has earmarked. It would just, so if Rob has these 3 schools that we don't know what they are yet, that Rutland Town would be, what Mutual Link was willing to take us on in addition, correct?
Yes, I can
Okay.
take us on
Yep, okay.
as an additional school.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Wonderful. When will that,
Whenever we're ready, we get permission from you guys authority, and then whenever we're ready. We're trying to do it before school starts, if possible. I'm not sure if that's gonna be possible, we're gonna have to, tweaks that. So, we have to contact Mutual Link and up from them what we can do.
Okay.
great. Do we need a motion to allow that, or is that just more knowledge?
No,
or
I think the
info?
big question would be is if, when we learn about the grant, I think that would be a discussion at that time where if the grant is approved, we'll look at how much the grant was approved for and what the cost will be. If the grant doesn't come through, then the discussion will be whether or not we,
We can keep it in the. form
right,
or not.
whatever that cost may be, so.
Because they told us we are not obligated for anything afterwards. If we can't afford it, the school can't afford it because we don't get the grant, then we're not obligated to keep it. At least it's a
Awesome.
trial, we can try it and, figure out if we like it.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
Absolutely there.
And what we could do is, at the next meeting, it would have to be done in executive session because it is around school security and safety. We could, Mike, Sarah, Officer Angie could provide an update in terms of where we're at, how it's going.
Great. Sounds
Okay.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right. So now we're moving to parent request.
So, Sarah Tetzloff had forwarded me a parent request, and the letter is in the shared folder, the Rutland Town board folder. So, the basic gist of this is that a family is going to be moving to Rutland Town. Their closing date is mid-October, I think October 15th or 16th, around that date. So they'd sent a letter to me. I explained to them as per F21, the admission of students, resident students, that anything past September 15th I can't approve. So that has to go before the board. What the family is was asking the board to consider is whether or not their children, their two children, would be allowed to start school here at the start of the school year, as opposed to waiting until mid-October when they become a resident. So.
Can I ask you to hold for a second, because I'm going to be recusing myself from the vote, and Tim stepped out for a second.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, he's back.
Yep. Okay.
I
Yep.
just wanted to make sure you didn't have
Yeah.
to repeat yourself fully.
Okay. So. All right. So.
All right.
So. All right. So I'll say it again. So that's
Sorry.
fine. That's okay. So we had a parent request come in. It was just Sarah Tetzloff, and then she had forwarded the information to myself as per our procedure. And I explained to the family that so the family currently is living in Killington. They're going to be moving to Rutland Town mid-October. I think it's October 15th. It's the closing date, and we do have documentation that supports that. They would like their two children to start school at the beginning of the year, obviously to smooth the transition, as opposed to starting somewhere else and then, 6 weeks later, coming back, or 5 weeks later and then starting a new school. I explained it to Sarah and to the family that the policy does not permit me to do that, because anything after September 15th really has to go before the board. And so the family would just like the board to consider that their request, that they allow their children to start the school year off here. I don't have an issue with that. I'm in support of it, but it is the board's decision. So.
Does anyone have any questions for Chris? I know the family, so I'm recusing myself from this vote.
I'd make the motion to allow them to start first day of school.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
If the closing doesn't go through in a situation like this, does it still?
They have to go back to show up to
Yes,
Killington.
well,
It
so
would have to
that's
come back
just
to the board,
discussion
probably.
would come back to the
That would
board.
be
To,
Oh, I
yes.
see. Okay.
Yep.
So Jeff made a motion to accept.
I'm good with it.
I'm also, yeah.
So all in favor?
Right?
All right, so 1 recused and 3 said yes. Thank you, Jeff. All right, and now we'll have our discussion about scheduling. I think that's, maybe you have some information for us, Mike?
Yeah, sure. So we've got the schedule all finalized for the year, so we have that set. We worked with one of our instructional coaches from last year and kind of worked out those details and all. She did a lot for us and helped explain it to me, as I'm not familiar with so much with the history and all for the scheduling. So it's looking good, and we've got our, I know we talked about elective options in there as well, and the board's talking about what those options look like for students and what the different times and all that. So we were able to work that out, and it looks like students will have so as they go into middle school, one thing to keep in mind, so part of our strategic plan to move into the literacy block, to move towards that, we put more time into core blocks. And so we had to do some shifting of specials and all. So students have various options throughout the years in middle school. Knowing that, and I know somebody had asked, I believe, about tech ed as well. So 8th graders get that once per week in tech ed, and so we were able to make that happen. So they'll get that in 8th grade for sure. And then they have the option for that, as well as other courses, instrumental music, chorus, etc., during that year and before as well. So yeah, the schedule's it's all set and ready to go.
So I think what I was hoping would be brought up was more of a document that showed kind of what changes were made. So for instance, last year middle school had this year they have this. So they have tech ed once a week. What did they have last year? Did they also have it once a week?
Yeah, I can
those
look.
type of questions. Spanish. They had Spanish 3 times a week last year. How much do they have it this year? Those type of things, just to kind of see what the changes were and just kind of have a discussion about, is that in line with what our vision is, with a strategic plan, that kind of thing, just to have a good discussion about it.
To have that visual set.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want us to bring that to a meeting?
Well,
how
does the board feel? I mean, that was what my intention was with this, but maybe it just wasn't realized. But I was wondering how the board felt about it.
I think it's something you gotta bring back to us and show us what all the differences are, and where he made the adjustments in there.
Yeah, we can do that.
Do you guys have any thoughts?
Is that what you're looking for?
I mean, I would like to, I think my biggest concern is that taking away of tech ed, especially for the 6th, 7th graders. Having it set in their zone, because I know how much they love it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're talking about those experiential learnings, that was one thing that we've had that big discussion on, is that hands-on, that building, that STEM. So I just wonder if, I'm all for academics, but when we, take away those, I think we're taking away from some of those kids that might not be your high ELA, but that is like where they shine. I would like to see the comparison between the two. I would, you know, just because.
What prompted it?
Well, the strategic plan and also the shift in the directive to increase the core class time. And by increasing the core class time, it made it more difficult to fit in some of the other things that the students have had before. So I think it's really helpful to kind of see it side by side, just to see what we've gained and what we've lost, and kind of see if that's in line with what the board's vision is for, and the community's vision for the school and the strategic plan.
Yeah.
How many extra minutes did you guys put into the classrooms?
I'd have to dig in and see. We can bring that to you too. The minutes. It's always a big puzzle with scheduling, especially in a pre-K to 8. It's all the pieces that fit together. It's a lot. And so, when you increase the core time, time has to come from somewhere. And we know that we offer a lot of electives here too. And I think seeing all the schools, Chris, I'm sure has seen, we offer quite a few. And so that was an area where we do really well. And just that was an area that we had to take from. Yeah.
Or do the kids get to choose their electives?
So they get to choose. So they have several options. They could choose instrumental music, they could choose chorus, or they have a third option, which is like an independent study class. And in that, it's that's that area where they could get tech ed or kind of interest driven, a few teachers working together, come up with a plan with the students.
In other words, if a student likes music and chorus, or like band and chorus, then they don't have independent study, is that correct?
Correct.
So then they would not have tech ed at all, is that
correct?
correct?
Until 8th grade.
Just 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hearing is by increasing the core classes, it decreased the number of times students have electives.
Right.
So I think something to discuss.
Yeah, I think
So I think it is a good conversation, but as we see in high schools, kids can't have everything.
Right.
That's just the reality. I mean, so I think I think the board and Sarah, Mike, Steph, you have to look at what our priorities, and so I know that the push to, with our core blocks was an attempt to, like I said, our students do well, but also we look at there's room for improvement, and so we are identifying, increasing those times to help assist our kids with their, instructional, being ready for secondary, whether Rutland High or Mill River or wherever they may go, or Long Trail. That was part of the goal. But I think the issue also is we can't appease everyone, because there are some who say, well, at tech ed, I don't want my kid at tech ed, because we have a lot of people who are saying, get tech out of schools. We want less tech. We want kids not in front of tech. We want more outdoor learning, be in the classroom. So you have this. So I think it's really important discussion for us as we move into budgeting, and as well as just to really set forth, here are our priorities. Here's what we'd like to see in our schedule, and then as Mike and Sarah work with the staff in building out scheduling for next year, that it really does reflect that vision of really what it is. So if it is going to be tech focused, that all students will have access to tech, but we even talk about foreign language. We had this discussion last year on Spanish, and that having students have access to Spanish 1 day a week for a small amount of time. What is the value of that, or should we do more short intensive bursts? I think those are good discussions for the board to have as they particularly look to schedule out, but also understanding that there be some things that will be swept off the table, or if a student wants to say be in band or chorus, that they may not have tech, and that's just a result of the scheduling, unless we want to continue to add additional staff.
Right, and that's why it's important, I think, to have the discussion now rather than wait. And also, we have the strategic plan that we're trying to implement, and that's, kind of goes along, I feel like, with offering different pathways and things, and by reducing options, I'm not sure it's in alignment all completely.
Are we looking at
working with our teachers on how to use that extra time. Because if it's just gonna be used to do like seat work or like homework, you know, cause I've seen where, you know, where schools have made big shifts in the number of minutes and it became, okay, now we have these extra 15 minutes, now we're gonna give you time to do your homework. You know, if that's the case, I don't want extra minutes put into the classroom, you know, because they could be doing something a little bit more hands-on. So if we are working with the teachers to look at those extra minutes and how to utilize them, you know, maybe for like tier 1 intervention or that kind of stuff, I think that's important on how are we utilizing that extra time in the classroom effectively. Because I don't want it just to be a couple extra minutes to do busy work. You know, because I could see that happening in some,
Right.
I've seen it, you know, so just making sure that we keep that in mind too, that.
Well, you're right. I think but that goes along the lines of effective versus ineffective teachers.
Absolutely.
An effective teacher can do a lot of things in 20 minutes, can do a lot of things in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Ineffective teachers can do a lot of ineffective things in 20 minutes, do a lot of ineffective things in 2 hours.
Absolutely.
So you're right. I think there are discussions that as we look at, you know, the quality instruction and learning, that's regardless of that time is being maximized, that it's not just being put in there and all of a sudden it's
Busy.
15 minutes of seat time or busy work or, right.
Yeah, so just that we're utilizing, if we are taking
Correct.
it away,
Mhm.
we're utilizing it to the best of our ability.
Right. It's value add, not value lost.
Absolutely.
Correct. Yep.
So it sounds like we're going to have a broader and more information scheduling conversation next time.
And we can bring that compare for you so you can see minutes and all that.
Great. If we could have that beforehand too in our packet so that we have
Oh, yeah.
you know, a few days to kind of digest it a little bit.
Of course.
It really helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is as much for next year's budget, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For the most part. I mean, that's all I can add. Like, as far as much information as can be provided, just in terms of like, you know, like when you were talking about, you can't have it all. And so I guess my perspective is, you know, you were talking about Spanish, right? Like, it's like I hear some people, whether, you know, they have knowledge on the topic or not, like, oh, you know, kindergarten, they're sponges, they need Spanish, right? And then I'm like, do they? You know, like, or does that 7th and 8th grader need more of that time that teacher, because the teacher only has X amount of time, you know.
Right.
So when you're splitting amongst, like you said, pre-K on up, like, how is that teacher's time best spent? And that's what, you know, I'm not gonna have the time outside of this forum to explore that in depth, you know. So that's the information that can really help me make, you know, the best decision on a yes or no or whatever when it comes to that. So.
And did you say, sorry if I missed it, did you say that the Spanish instruction was decreased in middle school from last year?
I will make sure that's in the compare document. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak on it if I'm not 100%. Yeah.
I know last year we looked at how the 9th graders did at least Rutland. I would love to know for this year's crop of 9th graders, you know, the ones that just left, you know, how they did, if that was something that Sarah could reach out again. Just so that we have that information too when we're discussing the Spanish. And I asked that because I specifically know of at least 2 students from here that are repeating Spanish 2 next year as sophomores because they didn't do as well as they wanted to.
Do you mean the kids that just graduated in June going
No,
in, or the kids?
the kids
who were
that graduated in
9th
June,
graders this year?
the kids that were 9th graders last year. So, you know, how many went into Spanish 1, how many went into Spanish 2, how many, you know, did, you know, and how they did. Were they prepared? That kind of thing. And who didn't, I guess, like how many of the students that had Spanish didn't take it at all, I guess. It would just be good to have that information, I think.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you. All right. Anything else before we move on? Okay. So I think we're on to director's orders. I'll need a motion to approve those that were in the packet?
I will make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Abby. Approval of the minutes from July 11th. There was just right here. 71K.
Oh.
I know why you wrote it.
Going quick.
I think there was maybe one more, but I don't remember where it is right now. But thank you very much for taking the
They will
notes.
be better, I promise.
Oh
I
no,
will.
don't worry. No, they were great. They were great. I need a motion to approve them.
I'll make them.
Thank you, Tim. With just a grammatical changes. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
You guys too?
Yep.
Okay. Superintendent's report.
Don't really have a lot for tonight. The summer is typically a slow time. It's just about getting schools ready to go, just buttoning some things up and schools ready to go for the year. In the report, I did put the legislative updates, so if you have any questions, I can answer those as best I can. I think some of them, Lewis can answer, we can answer when we get back. We did have the admin retreat back in July and, kind of discussing some of the things that we covered. We did focus a lot on the strategic plan, just, making sure that we were ready to go for year one, which we will be sharing with the SU board in September, just about, kind of where we're at. So it's been a busy summer. It's been a good summer, but, I think we're ready to get the kids back. And I know staff, some are excited to get back. It's August. It's a Sunday of the school year. It's people are looking forward to getting back. But it's been a good summer. So I do want to thank Mike for a lot of and Sarah, all the work they've done this year and working with Boys and Girls Club. It has been a successful transition, and I know that we're looking forward to also as a result of how successful it's been here. We're looking to expand that partnership and across the SU as well. So good. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the principal's reports.
So I have to throw in, I've loved it so far. I had a great start. Yeah, it's been awesome. I've especially enjoyed the summer academy. We've had summer academy kiddos here. We've had the Boys and Girls Club, of course, and our ESY programs. And I've really gotten to get to pop in, hang out, and get to know some kids in there and see how the programs work. And really appreciate Malik and Nicole coming in to talk about that as well. I think it was an awesome program this summer. Like we mentioned earlier, the enrollment numbers, so those in total have gone up. I don't have specifics yet of which grades and where, but we did have several enroll within the last week, so that's why that's going up. Looking to hire our GRCSU special education teacher and a long-term substitute teacher, special education substitute teacher as well. The middle school girls soccer coach, as you can see on the sign out there, still looking to hire one of those.
I have one in mind for you.
Seriously?
Yes,
Really?
I reached out. I'm waiting to hear back.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great news.
I'm looking.
We'll follow up. Yeah.
Yes, we will.
Betcha is looking to hire bus drivers and one for us as well. So, and just as far as building things going on, Kelly Treya and his team have been really busy. The facilities, they've been everything from cleaning, deep cleaning, to building new bookshelves for classrooms. They have been making new tables. They actually, in our conference room, they set that up. So those tables were built by Kelly and his team and set up in there. So it's just been so busy, and we're so appreciative of what he's done, he and his team there as well. Our yearly fire extinguisher inspection was completed. We have radon testing scheduled for the 14th, so we have that ongoing right now. We've got our life safety inspection. You can see the bullets in there. And then yearly sewer clean out both for August. We repaired the access to the gym card access there. And we had outlets installed for ADA doors by the main entrance out this way. The gym curtain power is scheduled to be completed before the start of school as well. And we did get new dehumidifiers for several of the classrooms for the carpeted classrooms in middle school, and had air quality testing done, and the tests all came out well. We have the yearly asbestos training. That'll be scheduled for the fall, and then, of course, lots of other random side projects you get done and going. We have some important dates. Really looking forward to Sweethearts and Heroes training tomorrow, which is restorative practices training. It just looks awesome. They've got videos online and things, and so if you haven't seen them, I recommend looking at them. It's awesome. And then we'll have new teachers have their orientation over at West Rutland on the 23rd. So that'll kick off teachers coming back. And then we have all teachers coming for their work day on August 25th. Then we have our whole GRCSU in service there on the 28th. And then, of course, our back to school nights and all. So the pre-K to 4th is the 28th, and that's 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. So you'll notice that's the same day as the GRCSU in service. So we'll go from West Rutland, come over this way. And so that gives our teachers enough time to get in, get settled, get set up, and then they'll have their back to school night there. Our building-based in-service here is on the 29th, and then, of course, our first day is August 30th. So it'll be awesome. And then we talked about Ginger Cook, so that is the 13th to the 15th. And then 5th to 8th have their back-to-school night just a little bit later on later in September on the 20th.
Is it typically that late?
I don't know what it's been for.
What, the back to school night?
Not sure.
It's been random the last few.
Yeah.
I mean, last year, I think it was around that time for all grades. Or maybe it was a week before that, but it was close to that, I think, last year. Prior to that, everybody came the Monday before.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good to split it up because it gets really crazy with the people in the building, the parking lots overfilling. It's really hard when the whole school's here at once. So I think
You have your 3-year-olds with your
Yeah.
with your 12-year-olds around, and yeah,
and it's really hard to hear and see in the gym to start it and things. So I think it's great that you split it up this year.
And your middle school sports night is also the 28th. I think,
August
right
28th at
yeah.
5:30.
Right
That wasn't
after
on
that.
there.
Yes, I believe so. Let me make sure. That's right. Good catch. Thank you. Yes, August 28th at 5:30. Yep, middle school sports meeting.
Is the difference between the summer academy and the extended school year that the summer academy is for non-special ed students? Okay. And then I was curious if you know if there's a pre-K waiting list at this point.
There is a waiting list. I haven't personally seen it, but I know we do have a waiting list.
So you don't know how many are on it?
I don't.
Would we be able to know that for next meeting?
Sure. Yeah, I can write it down.
And then I saw that the ADA doors the outlets were installed. Do you know when they'll be operational?
I do not. I'm not sure, but we can find out.
I'm hoping that'll be by the beginning of school because they kept saying they'd get it done over the summer.
And we do. So we have 18 on the pre-K waiting list.
18?
Yeah, just looked.
Oh, that is a lot.
It is a lot.
No, we don't know how many of those still have other options, and that's what we discussed in the past, but, yeah.
But the other options often aren't full-day programs, correct?
That's correct. We offer a Cadillac of services that
Yeah.
people like to have, so.
Which is pricey.
Yes, it does.
But also
Impact our
helpful.
budget, that's correct.
But it also impacts our student achievement. So,
Yes, it does have a benefit, that's why we do it.
yeah. Great. Thank you. That's wonderful to know. So on the agenda, there's no line item for the family handbook, so I believe that's probably supposed to be under the principal's report. Would that be correct, Chris? Would now be the time to talk about it, or?
Sure. Yeah.
So I had a little discussion with Chris about what the school board's role is as far as the handbook goes, because the handbook is really more a procedural. It includes some of the policies that the board creates, but it's really on the administration to put it together. So, but I think what my take was, it's not that we make the handbook, but we, have some input as to, is it following our intent of the policies, so to speak. So I didn't have time to read everything from cover to cover because I didn't get to it until yesterday, and it's quite long.
It is quite long, isn't it?
But I did want to just point out on the last page, on 74, it still has Mr. Gross as the transportation person.
Okay.
That's the last page.
Which draft? Okay.
I don't know if there are more than one draft. We only got one.
You did get.
It doesn't even say draft.
Thank you for pointing that out. I'll check.
Oh, you're
Who
welcome.
do we use for food services?
Abbey Group.
We do? Oh, back? What? Oh, okay. Yeah, I did. I was like, oh. I thought maybe it was just it's one area that you might not notice. So.
Thank you for catching that.
Oh, no problem. And like I said, I really did not go through it page by page, but I did kind of go through it. I didn't know if anybody else had any comments on it from your looking. You didn't see it in your. You didn't see it, you said? It's in the online.
Oh, this is the one, Christine. Right. Yeah. So that's the most
Yeah,
updated one.
it's online. That's
I'll check.
yeah.
in
This
the
just came
folder.
here. Yeah, it's in the folder. So one thing I had a question about was the gum chewing, which I'm trying to find the page now. There's a nice table of contents at the beginning, so let me go to that. It's on page 20. It was a little confusing to me the way it was written, so I'm thinking. Oh, this is a different this is different than I think I read. So maybe this is a different draft I just got.
It could be. This is so the one you have is what I've got. Did you see one online? That one was just uploaded like I think yesterday. I want to say.
The one that we got online was uploaded on last Thursday.
Last
so
Thursday.
Maybe there's been some changes.
There could have been. Yeah. Does yours say gum chewing is not permitted in the school building or on the school grounds? That one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other, let me go to tardiness. I was curious what the board thought about the tardiness one.
Chris, did the state laws change on truancy? So, are they still doing 5-day letters?
So there's some updated changes. We met with the Assistant Attorney General. There are some updated around timelines and things along those lines. So yes, there have been some changes from last year. So.
Will they be updated in handbooks or no?
Yes.
They will be. Okay.
And I do believe when we met with the Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General, they're going to meet with Bill and Evans, get some feedback on some procedural pieces that would better align, just simplify the process a little more.
Okay.
I apologize. It wasn't gum chewing that got my attention. It was right under gum chewing, the party invitations on page 20. It says party invitations are not allowed to be sent and or distributed through the classroom. And then the next sentence says invitations should be given out of school. Oh, out of school. But the main office is not allowed to give out addresses, but may be able to assist in the mailing of envelopes. If the whole class is invited, parents may submit sealed and stamped invitations with classmates' names to our main office, and we may be able to send them with the addresses. In the past, if the whole class was invited, they were allowed. Is this a new procedure?
So I do think, I just want to, one of the like what is micromanagement, what is really within board purview, and I don't know if this is really because it's not necessarily policy, so I think as a parent can express some concerns, but I think the board weighing in on that, so I think that's just kind of where.
Yeah, it's a weird.
Right, because I think, making
what I
sure that
was gonna
the
say.
handbook accurately reflects policies. But I think there are some things that, I have to trust that Sarah and Mike will put procedures in place that's, satisfactorily address the,
Mhm.
or the policy we have in place. So I like I said, I think it's just one where, you know, I don't know if, like, you know, party invitations is really worthy of a board discussion
Right.
tonight.
Oh, no, sorry about that. Let me go to the next one. The tardiness about students at all levels after 3 tardies. It has, I believe, been communicated that it's 3 tardies a quarter, and this says 3 tardies for the year, and it also says all grades. So I wanted to ask the board what they thought about that. And is that micromanaging, Chris? Or is that?
No, I think if you're looking at attendance and tardy, that's part of
That's
a
what
policy.
I was trying to look for.
Right, so if there,
Yeah.
you know, there are policies on attendance and
Yeah.
tardy, so that's within the boards, yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to find the page it's on. I think it's
That's-
on 11-ish, maybe?
Tardiness.
Yeah, 11,
Page, I've got it on page 13.
13, okay. So if you have your computer, if you don't, it's right here. So it says, if youth had, it doesn't specify a quarter, so 3 for the entire year. A student will receive a detention for every 3 days of unexcused tardies. So, does that include kindergartners and first graders?
Yeah, and it looks different. In we have detentions that we have after school detentions, and then there's lunch detentions. So we have those two also. And so my understanding is typically if it were a younger grade, it might be a lunch detention, but also detention in a restorative sense. I know there's kind of some stigma around the word detention. But my understanding is it's used more so for, we're having a conversation with them. So if say we're not wanting to get out of bed to come to school, maybe the parent could use some support on our end to say, hey, what's going on in the morning? What can we get you here? What can we do for you to help get you here at school on time and make sure we're ready for the classroom? We don't want you to be late and that kind of throw off your day, that kind of thing. So detention in the sense of that restorative piece too. I'm not familiar with a quarter aspect. My understanding is the whole year. However, knowing that, and Sarah and I have had this conversation too, knowing, say in September, you come in and there's an unexcused tardy, and then in October you come in, you have another one, but then it only happens again in March, then that's quite a span. And that's, that's not like consecutive, we've got a problem, we need to have a conversation. That might be 3, like, stuck out there in traffic, something along those lines that comes up. That's unexcused, but it's separate, it's within a time span. So we also use that discretion and the consequences for those.
What happens if it's not Sally's fault that she's late to school 3 days in a row? Does Sally get detention?
I know.
I mean, I'm thinking like kindergarten, first grade, either they're the last one dropped off because mom has to take the older siblings to the high school, or maybe it's mom having a hard time getting up, or dad getting up, or,
Or any of the grades, really.
yeah, this actually has been a conversation I think Sarah and I have had in the past,
I'll just speak. That's an SU-wide issue. I mean, well, it's a national issue. To be honest, I mean, every school in America faces this at some capacity. But I think one of the things we're looking at this year is, particularly through like EST or sport teams, are really trying to understand the nature of the problem. So if there is an attendance issue, and so let's say this third grader is coming to school every Monday and every Friday late to school, and there might be an issue at home, or transport coming from dad's house and now staying with mom during the week, or vice versa, or whatever it may be. But that's where the team will kind of take a look at what are the actions, how can we best support that student, support the family. I think there are some consequences. So the policy's not really meant to be, our policy not meant to be draconian. It really are. There should be navigating the gray. So in a situation like this, it's not just punishing a child for something that's beyond their control. But I think really we have to look at, whether it be, Mike or Sarah or any of our schools, how can we, best address this situation to prevent this from moving forward. And I think that, and that goes back to the truancy, same conversation we were having around, we're sending letters out the fifth, after the 5th day, after the 7th day, after the 10th day, and it's still, we're not moving the needle at all. But we're really not addressing the problem. We're just sending letters and trying to scare somebody into getting back to school. But really, school avoidance is a real issue, particularly the older that our kids get. And so we really have to better understand the problem. So I've just made a very long answer because it's very complex. So we're asking our admins to really just navigate that gray and really try to understand what the issue is and work with that student and with that family and try to ensure that they're here on time. And but it really is not just meant to be black and white. That's it. And I know we've had situations in the past where I've dealt with parents who've called and said, it's beyond my control or this, that, and yet I was told, sorry, that's how it is. I think we should be, a little more empathetic at times in understanding situations.
So, what if there's unexcused or excused tardies, they get the detention too? So, I don't understand quite the difference. I mean, if it's excused, then shouldn't they not get the detention?
So, I mean, I think that it would be kind of a rabbit hole to go down, like deciding what exactly is excused and what's not. It would be really, that's where Sarah and I use our discretion to work with families, and working with families is a big piece. We've come in late 3 times now. Let's talk. What's going on? What's happening there? I would, your car breaks down on the way to school. We understand why you were here 20 minutes late. That's excuse. You see what I'm saying? And that we're reasonable with that, and understanding what's excused and not. And it's really navigating, like Chris said, we want to make sure kids are here, and it's really, really important to be on time. Being late can disrupt the whole day, all of that. And so we want to have a procedure, but also we use our discretion with those types of things.
That sounds great.
Yeah, and I would emphasize, especially working with the families, Sarah and I are really, really big, and Chris, making sure we talk with them, see what's going on, especially if it's a repetitive situation. How can we best support you? Maybe that includes getting a hold of Tracy, our family school coordinator, and we come up with some kind of plan of somehow anything we can do to support families, make sure their kids are here, on time in attendance. Yeah.
And just to go back to the party invitations, what I was trying to make a point about was, if the whole class is invited, does it make sense to have the staff of the school be addressing envelopes for families,
I think the staff have so many other things to do besides now becoming party planners. I think if a family
right,
wants
that's
to
what I'm
invite,
saying. That's
then
why
it's
I'm
up
not.
to the family to
Yeah.
go to the post office, to personally place in the mail, but the burden should not be placed on a classroom teacher or the front office staff to mail out party invites for their.
That's almost archaic.
Right. Well, that's why that's what kind of I was like, what? That's what they do in the front office. They're addressing all these party, invitations, because that's what this says. That's what was my point.
I don't know the history behind this, of course, but what I would say is I think it's likely trying to address that you get one and you don't, that kind of thing. And if the kid's handing them out and I just skip over you and you don't get an invite to my party, but all 17 other kids in the class did, type of thing. So it's kind of trying to meet in the middle, because of course we also can't give out addresses to families. I can't give you a roster of their addresses in the class and then you mail them out from home, that type of thing. So I think it's trying to navigate that. And yeah, right, our school staff they've got their priorities and 20 invitations sitting on Pam's desk. It's like, here we go.
It's very nice that the school is providing that. It's just, it kind of blew my mind, because in the past you could bring it in if it was for everybody and it was handed out right in the class, and it just seemed a little simpler. And
I'm not sure how frequent that would even be. I assume you're probably well connected to many families via online anyway, I'm assuming. So they probably don't even use it that much, but I can't say for certain.
And I will say, Abby, with that additional time that we put in classes, now teachers have the opportunity to hand out
Yeah,
invitations.
that's what I'm talking, yes, yes. There'll be, that, with those extra 5 minutes.
End of class, you know, to-
Part of your concern is that becomes,
Would be.
Right.
task that's
Already invite
may
time.
take out of instructional time.
I'll just remember to send my family Christmas party invites to Pam so she can send them out for me.
Pam, don't watch the board meeting minute. No.
Thank you. All right, does anyone have anything else on that? Okay. All right, contract recommendations. We had several extracurricular teachers, and I would like to thank these teachers for stepping up and being district team leaders and band directors and coaches. So we have Jill Alderman for grades 1 and 2 team leader, Megan Miro, pre-K and kindergarten district team leader, Michael Rowe, grades 7 and 8 district team leader, Bailey Sanders, grades 5 and 6 district team leader, Catherine Duguay, grades 3 and 4 district team leader, Erin Audette for marching band and jazz band director, Amanda McIntyre for 7th and 8th grade cross-country coach, and Corey Pollock for 7th and 8th grade boys soccer coach. I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve all those contracts.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Vacancies, I did not see anything majorly new from last month, but they are in your packet for you to peruse. And next we have policies. Or sorry, the chair's report. So I asked Christine to include the Wellness Center update in the bucket online. Did you
I
see
have
that? Okay.
Yeah.
Did anyone have any questions regarding that? Okay. So that was addressed at the SU, so I will move on from there. At the
Tina, can I just
Oh,
would
sure.
encourage anyone who has any questions, please reach out to Bill Basic. Be more than happy to just answer any questions somebody may have about the program or.
well, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about it. For
I just was saying if anybody has any questions,
Okay.
so you could, yeah, so.
Okay. At the SU meeting, I did include the SU, or I had asked Christine to include the SU minutes in there, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. But I just wanted to kind of highlight a couple things that happened at that meeting. First of all, we had a parent in the SU come and request that the board consider a cell phone policy among the SU, and she brought many papers about how cell phone usage among teens and adolescents is not helpful to their learning and to their emotional well-being. And I was very happy to be at that meeting because I know that Rutland Town has a cell phone policy for 7th and 8th grade, which is listed in the handbook. My question is, does that, I'm curious as the school year goes on, are you seeing more cell phone use among 5th and 6th graders or younger? I'm just curious, and just a thought, not,
As a bus driver,
yeah,
when the kids get on those buses, they've got them out the whole time.
yeah.
So
I think in the school building, it's more of a problem as they get older, and that's why it's really 7th and 8th. Yeah.
I'm just curious if that's going to kind of trickle down, because it's been amazing, you go out to eat or you go in stores and you particularly eat, and you see, little kids, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds at tables just glued to it. So I'm curious what's going to happen as time goes on. But I was really proud of our school for having that already, so that's great. And also just a heads up that next time the principal's report might look a little bit different, because there'll be a template for the whole SU so that all principal reports look similar, including a section on any challenges that came up in the last month or any resources that are needed, so that the board's aware of kind of what's going on and what to look at for and help with. So, looking forward to that. And see if I had anything else here. And just to mention, the school board annual conference is October 26th to the 27th at Lake Maury. I was curious if anybody was attending or planning to attend. You'll be there.
26th.
And 27th. It's a Thursday and Friday. So what I did last year is I went up on Thursday morning and then stayed overnight Thursday night. It doesn't take the whole day on Friday. It's more of like a day and a half. So if you're interested in going, the board does pay for it. You have to let Christine know, I believe. Yeah, there were some full boards that went, and I think that it can be helpful. It's definitely nice to hear kind of what other boards are doing across the state, what other issues they're facing and dealing with, and it was insightful. So I'm glad I went. I'm hoping to go this year as well. And this goals, we already spoke a lot about the second floor. One of the other goals we had discussed about was the lifetime sports.
Yes.
And I think we were waiting for some more information, but I think it was partially from you and Colin and partially from Sarah.
Yeah, so my Germany text today was to talk a little bit about that. So Colin and I have been just talking back and forth about it. I think a couple of things to really start moving it forward is we need to, if we are going to do this, we need to talk about who are we sending, what grades are we sending if we're doing the entire school, and how many places do we want to send them to.
So what grades?
Yep.
I just gotta use the restroom. You can carry on, I'll be late.
What locations?
Yes, like what are the opportunities?
Activities.
Yep. So, you know, I know like Pico's a big one. I think we need to jump on it sooner rather than later. I know a lot of schools are already reaching out and solidifying. We also need to know what day of the week and how long. You know, like those are just to get the things off and running, we need to make some of those concrete decisions.
We need to know cost.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think once we know, it really, so I was, I will tell you, when I broke it down, when we were crunching numbers, Colin and I, just looking at what other schools have done it in the past, it came out to be, it gave him a per student cost. You know, like a rough one.
Colin had written me something.
Did he? Oh, it's up
He
here.
had about 23,000 with 280 students and staff for Rutland Middle School.
Yeah. And so it was about, so we figured it would be about $80 to $100 per student, like $80 per student. But we also go 11 different places, so depending on how
Rutland Middle School does?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the cost is a little bit probably higher than, you know.
Tina, could I recommend maybe that the board start like a committee?
That's what I was
Mhm.
going to say, because we need to, I was going to propose it.
Like Sarah and-
Yeah,
And
so
Lewis, maybe for to cover cost.
Sure, yeah. Yep.
Or at least to talk to him about cost.
But I think in order to just, these are the things that the board, if we do it, Colin and I will definitely run the committee, you know, we've already chatted about it.
Because if you want to do it sooner rather than later, it's a little easier to do committee meetings.
Yeah, and then, but just so you know that these are some of the questions that we will need from, on your end, you know, the time period, how long do you want to be out of the building for? You know, how many weeks do you want to do it for? 'Cause that all will build into your final cost.
Yeah, and I know Sarah's had some experience with Lifetime Sports too, and she has questions, I believe, for you as a board to answer that. You know, do you want to put all K through 8 on buses to go, and for how long, and talking about time and instructional time. So that does, you know, kind of tie into all of that with our conversations about scheduling and strategic planning and all. Like, how much time do you want to take away from those academics or your school day in order to do that? Is it whole day? You know, logistical pieces of moving 340 kids or so.
Helpful to get together with your questions and your questions. It sounds like they're similar questions.
Yeah,
and make
so-
We have a lot of
decisions
them,
when you
yeah.
look at finances. So that's why.
Because I think the finances will fluctuate a ton depending on how many hours, how many weeks, how many,
So maybe the first step is to talk about
the scheduling.
the schedule.
Yep.
Then and places.
And the numbers of students, yeah,
Yeah.
which
Who you
who
want
you
to
want going.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that I will send Colin a message to see when he's going to be back stateside. Who knows?
Probably before school starts,
I hope.
would imagine.
And then maybe we can create a Zoom meeting for you, me, Sarah, and Colin. If you
That
guys
would
are
have to
okay
be-
with.
That would have to be warned, right?
No, if there's only
No.
2 individuals. So I would then be a part of that, or someone would be,
Your
could be a
designee.
part of it, right? So,
It could just be your designee, right?
correct.
Yeah.
In my Disney, it could be Mike and,
Right.
and Sarah, right? So I went.
I would I personally would like it to be warned so that the public can come and
Okay.
I would like to include them in that discussion too, if they're interested.
So you'll find out from Colin when he's back, and then we can set a date and then warn it from there.
Yep,
Absolutely. That'd be great. Do we need to create the committee, or can we, like, with a motion, or
You could just
Oh.
appoint, just,
appoint?
yeah, just.
Okay. I appoint you and Colin on that committee.
Okay. I think Colin already appointed me, so.
I'm pretty sure. Okay, great. I wrote down a lot of what you said too, so.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, and I think that was all I had for my report. So moving on to policies. We have several first reads, A1, F27, G12, and G14. Chris was kind enough to give us a copy of the old G14 that included the numbers per classroom that we currently go by and have no plans to change at this time.
Correct, yeah, so the new policy omits a lot of this information. This will be more on the procedural piece, but I wanted to share it because we are not looking to change these numbers. If there ever would be a change in these numbers, it would be something we do at the SU level after a discussion around class size. And on the, I believe it's the 3rd page is like it has the minimum, the optimal, and the maximum, just for a point of reference as well, so. So I do think as we make adjustments, it's something we'd like to do across the SU, but also then you have to look at impact on staffing and, if reducing or increasing what that would do to our staffing allotments across all the schools, so I think there's some discussions.
And just a reminder that first reads will return for next time after being warned so that we can adopt them into policy. I don't have a lot of comments about the first reads other than on A1, the copy that we got still included the grammatical change I made at the SU meeting of just an apostrophe difference. But other than that, I didn't have anything. Does anyone have anything to add? So then I will entertain a motion to approve those policies, including the grammatical change on A1.
Tina, where was that grammatical change? Just so
It's
we
on
could-
page number 2.
Okay.
The teachers, it should be teachers apostrophe instead of teacher apostrophe S.
that we have in the record as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
no problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll make a motion to pass the first read through.
A1, F27, G12, and G14.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. All right.
Can I just ask a quick question about,
Is there a, when looking at the lifetime sports, is there a, like, off-campus or field trip staff-to-student ratio that the district has?
In terms of from a chaperone to a student?
Yeah. Do you,
Not that I'm aware of, no, so.
that just,
But I think we would probably go with, yeah, I think I'll double check that and I
Okay.
can get back to you. Might be more procedural, like school-based, they have something.
okay. That just plays into, like,
Yes.
numbers and stuff.
Yes,
when we're off.
right.
So I just want to make sure we have that.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Can you actually just shoot me an email
Yep.
sometime, just so, thank you.
Yep.
All right. H4 and I'll just skip down to F8 are both rescinded or asking to be rescinded policies. The reason H4 is asking to be rescinded is because E11, which is a new required policy, encompasses basically what H4 was. So we don't need to have two policies. And the reason F8 is being rescinded is because it has been merged more or less into F7. And so that's why they're being rescinded. Maybe instead of rescinding those first, why don't we go to the second reads and approve those first? So we have D10, D11, E10, E11, and F7 as second reads. Any comments? And any motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the second read.
Thank you, Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now that those have been passed, how about we go to H4 and F8? Any motion?
Can make that motion to rescind, or what? Approve the H4 and F8 to be rescinded? Is that what I'm?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Tim. All right. Next meeting is September 12th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the same place, Rutland Town Library. We'll be in our second week of, basically our second full week of, or our first full week of school, I guess, with Labor Day. So that'll be fun to kind of hear how things have gone for the first few days. And we do not have any community staff anymore, or community or staff present, so we'll skip the comments. We do not need an executive session tonight, so we are on to good and welfare.
I can start.
I love getting the letters from the teachers. That was very nice. Just the kids are super excited. I think Ren's excited to go school shopping for supplies because I know that was my favorite thing to do. So I think I might be a little excited to do that. But they even each got, along with the letter, a little postcard from their teachers. Ren from her TA teacher and Augie from it. So they're just that extra little, pick me up before school starts, So I think we're starting bedtimes this week. I'm so excited. School bedtimes are starting. It was going to start tonight, but she's at your house. I'll text her and tell her. But just excited for the new school year. They are. They're itching to come back.
I know my son is excited they got their schedule today.
Mm-hmm.
So that part's fun. And it's been a really nice summer. It's nice to see some of the shifts and the how clean the school is getting and how things are moving around. It's fun to see the changes over the summer.
Yeah.
my grandson is excited about starting school, and he'll be here for the first family night. He's ready to go.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, this time of year, it's like it's hard to believe it's here again already, you know. But just seeing, you can see kids down at Summit Field starting to kick this out. So you see like the next season coming, you know, soccer season starting, and those emails going out, and like the scheduling and stuff. Which Sophie got her schedule, and it was like immediately like texts and emails and stuff. If the kid wasn't answering, she's finding out the parents not, you know, can't give out addresses kind of deal. She could send in addresses too. She could. Just excited to see who's in their class, and you know what a bond those classmates make. So, so no, great time for sure. And yeah, that's about all I got. I did play Risk for the first time in my life with Wes the other day and got my bum kicked. So we put on Hamilton soundtrack to you know, listen to that. But so that was great. That was great to see, you know, the kids' minds really expand as they get older. So bittersweet.
Thank you all. And I'll make sure I let, you know, Sarah and Kelly know about, you know, yeah, thank you.
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.